What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. In this video, we are going to go over one of the scariest legends in all of England. And if you think you're brave enough, you can actually visit this place today because it's still standing. This is the story of the Black Monk of Pontefract. Back in 1812, an Italian man named Pontefract joined a religious order known as the Conventual Franciscans in Pontefract, England. From what we can tell about him from the records, he wasn't exactly the model monk. He was a bit of a hothead, getting into fights and other kinds of trouble. In fact, he was sent to jail for a full year because of his behavior. But after that year had passed, he was allowed back into the monastery. But he didn't stay there for very long because, in 1817, he decided to switch things up and become a hermit instead. And so he built himself a small hut just outside of the town of Pontefract, where he spent most of his days in prayer and solitude. However, the other monks at the monastery saw this move as being a little self-centered, and they were unhappy that he left without telling anyone where he was going first, so they excommunicated him and declared him a heretic, meaning that they cut off all ties with him and essentially told him that he was no longer welcome amongst them. Even his family stopped communicating with him, leaving him truly alone, and that's when things started to get weird. One day, Brother Ambrose was out gathering firewood when he came across a large black coffin in the middle of the woods. Curious, he went over to it and opened it up, and it was filled with bones. Now, you might be thinking, well, why is that weird? Well, there was also a small glass case inside that coffin. The heart was wrapped around 3 fingers, and it was still moving. As soon as he saw it, Brother Ambrose knew that this was a demon, and he ran away as fast as he could. Now, he tried to ignore the incident and pretend like it never happened. But every night he began to hear scratching sounds coming from inside his room. At first, he thought it was mice, but then he realized that the sounds were far too heavy to be rodents. And then he began hearing chains dragging metal moans. Then one night, as he was writing in his journal, he heard chains dragging closer and closer to his bed until they stopped right beside him. When he finally got up the courage to look under his bed, and he saw the scariest thing imaginable, a skeleton wearing shackles. It looked like an emaciated old man, and it was dragging itself closer and closer to him. But before he could do anything, the skeleton climbed into his bed and vanished. The next morning, Brother Ambrose reported everything to the local priest. But he didn't believe him and suggested that he needed some time away from the monastery. But Brother Ambrose knew that something evil had entered his life, and he was determined to destroy it. So he packed up his things and moved to a new hut, further away from the monastery. However, the demon followed him there, and he continued hearing the same sounds every single night. It was driving him insane, and one day he had enough. He grabbed his shovel and dug a hole deep under his new hut. When he was done, he placed the coffin that he found earlier over top of the hole and locked it shut. Then he started filling the hole back in with dirt. After a few hours, the demon grew tired and stopped moving. Brother Ambrose then poured holy water down the hole and recited prayers over it until the sun came up, and when he opened the coffin, the demon was gone. But not only that, the skeleton that was inside was now completely disintegrated, leaving nothing but dust behind. Finally, free of the demon, Brother Ambrose returned to the monastery to confess everything to the priest, and this time the priest believed him and apologized for not listening before. Together, they decided to exhume the remains of the demon and bring them to the nearby church, so that they could be blessed by holy water. But when they arrived, the townspeople gathered there were terrified by the sight of the skeleton. They believed that it was the devil himself, and they wanted nothing to do with it. So the 2 men were forced to take the remains back to the hut and bury them there instead. However, that didn't stop the rumors from spreading. Some people claimed that the bones were stolen from the church. Others said that the devil was still haunting the area, but Brother Ambrose knew the truth. He kept guard over the remains throughout the night, and he never heard the chains dragging again. In fact, he became much happier after the experience. He was able to help heal the sick and perform miracles with the blessing of God. And he continued living the life of a hermit until he died in 1842. Now, there have been many attempts to verify the story over the years. The hut where he lived has been excavated several times, but no artifacts or evidence of the alleged haunting have ever been found. And there's a reason for that. You see, Brother Ambrose never really existed. I know it's kind of a twist ending, but stick with me here. There was a man named Ambrogio Lori who became a monk in Italy, but he never moved to England. There's also no record of any excommunication or other conflicts during his life, which would have taken place between 1812 and 1829. Instead, after becoming a hermit in 1829, he began having visions and wrote down stories about saints and martyrs. These stories are very similar to the story of the Black Monk of Pontefract, and since the tales were popular, someone named Thomas D. Whitaker decided to combine them all into one book and publish it in 1856. The book was called The Black Monk of Pontefract, and it included stories of the saintly hermits of St. Francis at Guiseley, near Leeds, England. But while those stories are real, the character of Brother Ambrose is entirely fictional. However, even though the main character isn't real, that doesn't mean that the story isn't. A lot of the story is based off of actual events that took place in the monastery, including the scuffles and arguments that the monks would get into. There were also reports of strange occurrences at the monastery, including shaking beds and rattling windows, and these accounts date all the way back to the 1300s. Some people even claim that the ghost of a monk named Robert was seen wandering the halls of the monastery, and according to legend, he was cursed to wander for eternity, because he was caught stealing money from the poor box when he died. Now, back in the late 1800s, a woman named Anne Ridsdale decided she wanted to prove once and for all if the ghost was real or not. She moved into the monastery with her husband and set up camp in the room where the ghost was said to appear. But while she was there, she heard chains dragging, footsteps, and even felt a cold hand on hers. So she took matters into her own hands and contacted the ghost directly. To her surprise, the ghost agreed to meet with her, and in the middle of the night, she saw the apparition of a monk dragging himself closer and closer to her. But as he approached, she felt his pain and sorrow, and she realized that he wasn't a monster, just a man. And at that moment, his form began to fade away until he eventually vanished. After that, Anne and her husband continued investigating paranormal activity in haunted places all over England, and they published their findings in books and newspapers. But unfortunately, the story of the Black Monk of Pontefract has been lost to time. If it wasn't for the excavation of the hut where the demon was buried, almost no one would know about this legend today. But the story has endured for so long because it contains elements of Christian folklore, such as the idea that demons can possess people or objects, or that they can be cast out through prayer and holy water. These themes have been used in literature and art for centuries, and they continue to be popular today. Now, unfortunately, the location is not open to the public, but there are plans to open it up as a heritage center in the future. Maybe we will find evidence of the demon while they're excavating the site. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to hear more scary stories, check out some other videos. Thanks for watching.